السلام عليكم everyone. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء سيدنا محمد وعلى أصحابه أجمعين. So I want to tell you first why I am especially qualified to talk about Star Wars. And faith or no faith, there is no try. And I have to say, I believe it was Kiel University who decided I was the traveling Yoda. So right now, Kiel is my favorite. So sorry to Bart, but that's because so I actually was 11 years old when the first three Star Wars started to come out. So I saw them in the theater in the 1970s, or however old I was. I don't know how old I was, but I was old enough to go to the theater and see these first three movies. So is there anyone here who hasn't seen Star Wars? Okay, so this is for you. Thank you for your honesty. So the first three movies that came out that are the bulk of the story came out in the 70s. And those, I saw them in the theater, and I was very impressed by them, and I liked them then. And then the next three movies, which were the prequels for that part of the story, came out in the 90s. And there's a lot of debate online about whether they were good or not and how they strayed from the original story of the Force and all of this. The real hardcore Star Wars fans will have a lot of opinions about that. And then now, in the last few years, there are minor stories coming out, and then the final three epilogues, if you will, or I don't know what you want to call them, sequels, or I think more like epilogue of this story. Like, how does this story end? Is coming out now. And of course, this month is the final one. And for those who haven't seen Star Wars, it's based on the idea that the whole world the universe now is the world instead of the globe. So you're meeting all sorts of creatures and people that look very different. Some people have very big, large trunks for noses and weird skin and different colors of skin, blue and purple and orange, and all different types of bodies. We have Yoda, who when he's 50 years old, he's still a child. And he lives until he's, 900 and something, whatever. That's his species, okay? His species does this. And so the creatures of the universe are all different. We meet all these different types of creatures. And the plot of this, the really sort of simple plot is you've got the universe is coming together in a democratic sort of way with the Senate, but there's this evil emperor who wants to take over and run it like a dictator. Okay, that's really simplified the story. So you have hope in the Force, and then there's the Force is what is good in this world, and the Force can be accessed by Jedis. Jedis are the peacekeepers in the universe, and the opposite side of these Jedis are the Sith, and the Sith access the dark side of the Force. If you haven't seen it at all, that might feel confusing, but I'm going to be referencing that stuff. Did you have a question? Not anymore. Okay.
There's another Sith.
There's another. There.
Two different Siths.
Siths always travel together.
There's actually two different.
They always travel together. There's never one Sith. There's always two. So if you kill one, he's always going to get another, right? Correct? Yeah. So the Siths are those who access the dark side. As in the introduction, we introduced the idea that Star Wars was originally written with this sort of idea of spirituality. George Lucas said that he wrote it because he wanted to create an analogy for God so that young people would start to believe in God again. So there was an intentional spirituality. He accessed Islamic spirituality. He accessed Christian spirituality, he accessed Buddhist spirituality, and built this world of the Force and Jedis and what have you. For the hardcore fans of Star Wars, I would say that quite a bit of what the Force is very much rooted in Islamic spirituality. The only thing that I would say is that Islamic spirituality does not agree with the idea of equal power in good and evil. Islamic spirituality says good is good and good is powerful, and evil never has the equal power to good. So that would be more of a Christian influence in the spirituality of the Force. However, if we want to talk about how are we thinking, since Star Wars is our framework and we're thinking about it, let's look at why is it important to think about Star Wars? Why is it important to think about the Jedis? Why is it, and also, in our Muslim history, okay, the Prophet ﷺ said that every 100 years, in order to preserve our religion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send one, man yujaddid dinukum, one who will renew or revive your religion for you. And we call these people mujaddidin in the plural, or a mujaddid. But of course, if you spell out mujaddidin in English, what do you get in the middle? Huh? Jedis. That's right. So we're building our goal is to build Jedi Muslims all around the world who will revive and renew our faith in today's world. A little bit more about me. I'm American. I became a Muslim in 1985, so not too long after the first 3 Star Wars movies. And I got my master's degree a long time ago. I lived in Syria for 20 years. While I lived in Syria, that's where I was studying Islamic studies. And I left Syria in 2012 because of the war and went back to the United States, where I finished my doctorate in leadership. And I do run an organization called Rabata. And Rabata's mission statement is to promote positive cultural change with creative educational experiences. And that's important because I'm an educator. I really believe in education, but I also believe that we need to have an open mind when it comes to education. And we have to be thinking about different ways to address young people and to address older people, to address all people in order to bring us back into the understanding of the force. So in today's world, the second context is outside of Star Wars, we're facing a time of great secularism. And certainly the universe of which Luke comes up into in the first three movies that are made in the 70s, okay? So Luke Skywalker, he comes into this world where the Senate has taken over, this emperor has taken over is what I mean. There's all this darkness, the Jedis have given up. Obi-Wan Kenobi is a wuss, he's sitting in the corner somewhere not doing anything. And Yoda is off on his land. Nobody's doing anything. And here's Luke Skywalker who comes up. So basically, it's 2019 in our global situation. Why is that? Why am I saying that? Because we are facing a time when the force of goodness, if you will, has been put to the side. We're dealing in a world of great secularism. Secularism, materialism, and capitalism. And as a result of that, atheism. Now, atheism is different, but so let's define these 3 so we all know what we're talking about. Secularism is this idea that what is secular is critical and what is sacred is no longer real. What is sacred is not real, and what is secular is real because I can feel it. It's what is hard and in front of me and I can touch it. So secularism is a devotion to a secular life, and relying on the philosophies of secularism in order to promote lifestyles and the way we want to live. Materialism is an attachment to material goods and a competing for material goods. And what was the third one I said? Capitalism is an economic system that supports materialism and secularism. I want to make one point about capitalism and materialism because it's a critical thing to know, and you should all know this here in England anyway, which is that capitalism originated with Adam Smith. Adam Smith was a Calvinist. Calvinism believes that every human being is born with, it's already written for that human being whether you're going to hell or heaven. There's no choice. There is no possible way to determine that. And so part of Calvinist thinking developed then to say, well, how do we know? We want to figure out who is it that's going to heaven and who is it that's going to hell. And so part of what happened with Calvinism was they made this decision that the sign of God's pleasure on this earth, the sign that indeed this person will go to heaven, was partially, this isn't the whole theory, was partially in economic success. And so the competition for material goods became the competition for proof that I am a person of heaven. And this then developed into what ended up being capitalism and secularism and materialism. We're still holding on to this Calvinist idea that the paradigm of thinking in the Western world is that we need to compete for worldly goods so we can have more of them. And all of the way that society has been set up, whether it's credit or debt or what have you, to keep the poor people poor and make the rich people richer. It all surrounds around this idea that economics are something that identifies whether a person is a person of heaven or hell. Even though we don't think like that anymore. I would imagine very few people think like that anymore. But it's been integrated into part of society because of capitalism. Secondly, atheism, which is becoming very popular, we need to recognize, or I'm defining now so we can talk about these things. Atheism really is a religion because it takes a lot of work to be an atheist. There's first the denial of God, but then there's the work it takes to continue to deny the existence of God. And if we want to use the analogy of the Force, it's like walking within the Force all the time and yet denying that we're walking within the Force. And so as a result, atheism has become what we call a movement. You can't be a movement unless you're a religion, unless you have a lifestyle and a belief system that you want to prove and that you want to talk about and that you want to discuss. And so atheism, as it's growing, is growing as a result of some of the ugliness of materialism and capitalism and secularism that has grown in society. Atheism is coming and saying, oh, we can respond to this. And religion, partially because in the Western world, Christianity didn't have answers that were intellectually sound for Westerners. Christianity doesn't have the answers. Right now in Europe, the statistic this morning, I believe, was only, I was looking them up, and 1% of young people in England from the age of 18 to 25 consider themselves regular churchgoers. That's nuts. That's crazy. And in America, it's not like that. There are far more Christians in America than there are here in Europe. But that by itself tells you something about the capacity for people to answer the questions that they have through the church and how that's helping them or not. So anyway, so here we are in this world where we're bombarded with secularism and materialism and capitalism, and we're made to really feel that these are the paradigms that we should be thinking about. So now we think about, if we're going to go back to Star Wars now, we think about, here they were when Luke Skywalker was suddenly, his family is killed, R2-D2 comes to bring him the message from Princess Leia, who is saying, we need your help, to who? To Obi-Wan Kenobi, actually. He finds it, he brings the message to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and now Luke Skywalker is on the road to be a Jedi. He's walking on this road to be a Jedi to save the universe. From what? To save the universe from the forgotten Force. The Force that has been forgotten. And he goes, finds Yoda, and he learns about the Force, and he completes his training, kind of, sort of. There's a discussion around that. Did he actually complete his training? He has to face his father, and all this other stuff. We'll talk about details about Darth Vader tomorrow. But for today, what Luke Skywalker is doing is really what every Muslim is called upon to do. And that is to re-access the force of spirituality that has been cut off from us. Modernism, which was an early 20th century movement, if you will, that occurred especially, it started before that, but it became popular in Muslim countries in the early 20th century. Modernism is this idea that capital T tradition is no longer any good. So it's separated Christians from the church. And that science brings capital T truth. The way Muslims responded to modernism was by cutting us off from tradition, by saying that, okay, we're not going to follow anymore the early ways of spirituality, we're going to make up new things ourselves. And so what's happened with that is that as Muslims, we have walked away from everything that gave us what we need to combat the negativity, or let's not even say negativity, the paradigm of secularism and materialism, capitalism, and even atheism that we're facing every single day. Because Muslims, we're stuck, and we're like Luke Skywalker. He's on the plane, that's not a plane, it's a whatever it is, the flying machine. And he's on this, and he's playing with the Force, and he's playing with what does Obi-Wan Kenobi tell him? Stop looking at it. He puts a mask on his eyes so he can't see. And he says, trust your heart and not your eyes. And in that, he's able to, with his lightsaber, find the little thing that's floating around in front of him. And we say, oh, this is just the movie. But in actuality, this is an important skill for Muslims to have. Because as we start to look out, if we're going to trust everything that we see, we're going to start believing this post-truth society. We're going to start to believe that what is not true is true. We have a society of people who ghost and gaslight. And so we have to know the difference between what is real and what isn't real. And so if we go back to Luke Skywalker, we can become and we access the Force, the Islamic Force. We'll talk about how to do that in a minute. Then we can change ourselves from the people who have become deadened into people who really can carry around our spiritual lightsaber and access the force of good that we have been given the tools to access. So I'm going to talk about 3 different ways to access this spiritual force. The one is intellectual, and the other is emotional, and the third is spiritual. So first is intellectual. Our intellectual access to the force, and let me just first define what force I'm talking about, because I am not talking about the midichlorians in all of your bloodstreams. I'm talking instead about the definition of the force of the Prophet ﷺ. Even if we look at his life, okay, think about the Jedis and what the Jedis can do. If you look at the Prophet's life, ﷺ, one of our great mistakes in Islamic studies curriculum is that we list out all of the battles and we leave to the side all of the miracles. This is a direct result of curriculum that was written during the modernist period. Because modernism rejected miracles, we got shy about our miracles, even the miracles of Rasulullah. And so we didn't include them in Islamic studies curriculum. And when we didn't include those miracles in Islamic studies curriculum, we began to forget that they even existed. But we have the Prophet ﷺ from the beginning of the wahi, even from before the wahi, experiencing what could only be defined as, if we're using Star Wars, as force accessing miracles in ways we can't even imagine. We have him giving salam and hearing salam from stone and tree, even before he's a Muslim. We have the tree that cried because he was no longer leaning against it. What is that? And he could hear it. And actually, so could the rest of the companions. This is a mutawatir hadith. This means that at least 70 of the companions also could access that force and listen to or hear the wailing or the crying or the weeping, depends on the word you want to use, of the tree that missed the contact of the Prophet ﷺ. We have simpler things. Like, for example, when the small little pile, the pile of dates that were the size of a baby goat, was enough to feed hundreds of hungry men. We have the times when the Prophet ﷺ spat in something and because of that cured a child, or was able to stick an eye back in someone's head and the eye would start working. You're in a medical school, you know that doesn't work. You can't just go poke and it goes back in and that's all fine. It doesn't work like that. With the Prophet ﷺ it did. Why? He's accessing a force, an Islamic force, a force that is different. Something that is different and is accessible amongst us. We have story after story. We have when the Prophet ﷺ is standing in Medina and he's speaking to the audience in the Masjid of Medina. And he's talking about what's happening with Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, Zayd ibn Haritha, first Ja'far ibn Abi Talib and then Abdullah ibn Rawaha, as they are fighting and one falls after the other. He's telling them, and now make dua and seek forgiveness for your brother Zayd ibn Haritha. Oh, now Ja'far has picked up the standard. Oh, make dua for him, he's fallen. Abdullah ibn Rawaha, what is that? Like, think about that. What is that? Is he watching? What? Does he have his smartphone out? And he's like YouTubing what's going on over there to watch what's happening? Certainly not. Certainly not. Well, what is it? What is it? I mean, we have Islamic words for this. Firasa, we have Islamic words for this, of the ability to see truth even though the truth isn't here. We have a revealing, a moving of the veils. But since we're talking about the force today, since we're using the analogy of the force, and we're looking for our Islamic, what is our spiritual, what is the force for us? Then we can see that that is what that is. This talk today is based on Yoda's famous statement, do or do not, there is no try. They're out in the swamp and the ship has gone under the water. And Luke says, Yoda tells him, lift it up. He says, I can't, it's too big. I'm trying. He says, I'm trying, whining, just like all young people whining. Just kidding. Just kidding. All human beings are always whining. We're always whining about something, right? And he says, I can't do it. It's too hard. I'm trying. And Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try. So this is faith or faith not, if I can change the language. There is no try. There is no I'm trying to be a good Muslim. What is that? There's no I'm trying to have faith. No, that doesn't, no. It's faith or faith not. There is no try. There's no middle ground. There's no, I kind of sort of believe in God. No. I kind of sort of am a Muslim. No, it's faith or faith not. There is no try. And so with these miracles of the Prophet ﷺ, part of our problem is we don't know them anymore. But those miracles lasted after his death. And they passed on to others. Uthman ibn Affan, once he was standing as Amir al-Mu'mineen, and one of the companions on his way to see him, he was on his way and a very beautiful woman passed by and he checked her out. Well, that's what he did. And so he walked in and Uthman ibn Affan says, do you have the audacity to come before me with the face of an adulterer? Hey, this is not about the look. This is about Uthman. What kind of eyes did he see with? What is he seeing on the inside? This is the force. This is Yoda. This is Yoda and what can be seen and what can't be seen. Keep on going. Nana Asma'u of Africa, who was a great scholar and great, I believe, mujaddida of Africa, who one time her father rushed into her. They were in war and her brother was a general and he was fighting. Her father was Osman Dan Fodio, a very famous leader, rushed to his daughter, who was about 18 at the time, and said to her, Asma, your brother is being defeated, or I don't know exactly what he said, something like that. And so she lifted up like a piece of, what do you call it? When you lift up a piece of wood from the fire, like a piece of wood, whatever. You got it, you're following me, okay? She lifted it up and she raised it up and she said, she spoke to her brother, far away, okay, not with the iPhone, and said, burn the area. She was saying, burn, O area. When her brother came back, he said that he was about to be defeated when suddenly a fire started and separated him from the enemy. No, what is that? What is that? What is that? What is that? It's either crazy stories or it's a force of spirituality that we have completely lost touch with. They've completely stopped believing in. And so intellectually, if we are to be the mujaddidun, the Jedis of our Muslim culture, we need to intellectually understand that there are veils between us and the unseen world, but that doesn't make the unseen world unreal. The reality of the chairs you're sitting in today, they're real. And I know everyone in this room, nobody here would deny the reality of the green chair, except for maybe the ones sitting in the red ones. Everyone else is going to admit that this is a chair and I'm sitting in it, and this is a table and I'm standing in front of it and I can touch it and I can knock on it and there's a tablecloth on top. We all understand and believe this. But part of our aqidah, the 6 points of aqidah, is to believe in the unseen. The malaika are those that are unseen. We don't deny the reality of angels, so why aren't we friends with them? Why aren't we seeing them? Why don't we live lives that magnetize our lives for angels? Why don't we live in such a way to become a place where angels are coming to us, where we begin to be a magnet for angels? If we really understand the unseen world, we understand it's not just about the akhirah, it's about right now. And really the unseen world is not difficult to believe in, because there's a lot in the unseen world that we all believe in, like love and hope. Love and hope are not something you can see. You can't touch it. You can't pick up hope and put it on the shelf. You can't say, oh, this love, I like this love. I'm going to save this in the freezer so it's fresh next year. It doesn't work like that. Love is of the unseen world, as is hope, as are angels, as are jinn, as is so much, as is accessing so much of what we don't understand. The Prophet ﷺ, in a very beautiful hadith Qudsi, speaks at length about what it is that gives us the ability to access that unseen world. What does he say? He starts talking about those who fight against the awliya of God, the friends of God. That قَدْ آذَنْتُهُ بِالْحَرْبِ, for the one who is fighting against my friends, I announce to him war. But then it goes on. And it goes on and it says, and for those who want to come close to me, start with a fard. But the one who works on nawafil, extras, أحببت, I become of the one he loves. And if I love him, then I become the eyes with which he sees with, the ears with, what does that mean? The eyes with which he sees with? A'udhu billah. Are we anthropomorphizing God now? No. No. It becomes firasa, becomes a divine seeing. The veils of the unseen world thin. Is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. I become the eyes with which he sees with, the ears with which he hears with, the hands with which he does things with, and the feet with which he goes with. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means that the human being, if intellectually we can understand that this unseen world is real and we can access it. And like Luke, who had to have the mask so that he could really begin to feel how to see the very thing in front of him and begin to know what is true and what is not true, not only relying on his eyes, but relying on his heart. Once we can do that, we will be able, because we are stuck now. We're stuck in a time, if we're going to believe everything we see, we're in big trouble. Between, what's the software that changes pictures? Photoshop. Between Photoshop and breaking up videos and putting videos together, the very basic things that tell us we shouldn't believe everything we see, to something much greater, which is things that just are bananas, that we're going, really? That's crazy stuff. When we see these things, we have to understand that we have to be able to cover our eyes and see with our hearts. Intellectually. And what about emotionally? Emotionally, if we want to be a Jedi of the Mujaddideen, a Jedi, Yoda is very clear about what the problem is with our emotions. What's the worst emotion? Fear. Fear leads to anger, and anger leads to the dark side. That's Yoda. But certainly we know this to be true. We certainly know this to be true, that fear is what holds us back. Why don't you pray during class? I'm afraid to ask for a place. I'm afraid to walk out and miss part of the lecture. I'm afraid, why doesn't someone pray at the mall? I'm afraid to pray in front of people. Why? What is going on in the world of whenever we step away from our force? We're stepping away from our force as a result of fear. And when we get angry, when we have anger and bitterness and ugliness, that's when we've really stepped away. It is the heart that is angry and bitter and ugly that steps away from all of the reality of the akhirah. We're just not seeing it anymore. We don't know the reality of the akhirah, and we don't know the reality of the unseen world, because we're so filled, just like Anakin Skywalker. What happens to Anakin Skywalker? He gets angry. He's afraid. his mother falls sick and he kills all the little sand people. Why does he do it? He does it because he's angry. Why is he angry? He's angry because he was afraid. He was afraid to not see his mother again, and then he was ashamed. He was ashamed of himself for taking so long. And from one thing after another, emotions that are uncontrolled, and we live in a time. How do you feel? How do you feel? Oh, really? How do you feel? We live in a time where we have made our feelings divine. Our feelings are what's most important. But I feel like this. Okay, so what? It doesn't matter that you feel like that. Where is the principles of the other? The principle of God, of worship of God, the principle of just plain old goodness. All of these principles have been reduced into me, myself, and how I feel. And in math, you can reduce all of that to the point, right? The point, the little point. The point can't see anything in math. You guys are all science people, right? So what's the difference between a point and a line? A point can't even see a line. Point just says me, 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 me. And a line, what about a line? A line only sees the one dimension of the line. And a square only sees the two dimensions of the square. But we're being asked as Muslims to see the full sphere, all the dimensions of what it means to be a human being. But we can't see that if we're stuck in the me of our emotions, of the emotion that becomes, that takes away our faith. And that's what happens. And the third one is practice. So for the Jedi, the Jedi in the movie, for the Jedi he had to go and find Yoda, and he had to practice, and he had to go down into the cave, and he had to face his fears, and he had to learn how to use a lightsaber. He had to practice, and he had to learn how to control his emotions. But the practice for the Muslim is critical if we're going to decide faith or no faith. And its practice includes, because of this hadith we talked about, the nawafil, that which is extra. And we are in a crisis time in our world. The majority of Muslims are not praying regularly. And if they're praying regularly, they're missing fard all the time. And they're like, I slept. And imagine the Jedi with the lightsaber. Oh, I forgot to charge it. Do they need charging? I don't know. But imagine if they pull it out and it's not working. Oh, whoops, I forgot to charge it. That's just like if we're not praying. Oh, I forgot to charge my heart. I forgot to charge my ability to be a Jedi. I forgot to charge my ability to live in this world. And when we don't charge our phone, we freak out. We go buy a battery. We go find someone out. Do you have a battery? Do you have a light? Do you have a charger? Do you have a charger? We'll ask people we don't know. Anyone. We'll ask anyone. We can't ask them, can I pray here? No. But do you have a charger? Because we can't be without our phone for a minute. But to ask someone, can I pray here? I'm going to pray in front of you, or I'm going to pray over this place. In the airport here, I had to stop in Atlanta, and I had to pray there. And so there was this place. So I like to entertain myself. So there was this place where there were these two TSA police officers, the security people. And I was like, this is the perfect place to pray. Yeah, because mashallah, if anyone tries to give me a hard time, they're going to protect me, right? I was like, Allahu Akbar. But they were, I don't know, they might have been from Minnesota because they pretended like they didn't even see me. But anyway, in Minnesota, we like to pretend we don't see things that are uncomfortable for us. The point being that the practice of what it means to be a person of faith is just as important as the decision to be a person of faith. It goes together. Just like if you stop loving someone, the real cure for that, people always ask me, they tell me, oh, but I don't, women all the time, I don't love my husband anymore. And I'm like, yeah. Oh, what should I do? My answer is always the same. Okay, love him. No. I just got done telling you I don't love my husband anymore. Yeah. So what should I do? Love him, because love is a verb. It's not an emotion. Love is a verb. The way we act loving, we feel loving. When we act like people of faith, we will grow our faith. But if we're waiting, like I have people tell me all the time, oh, I'm going to wait, when I'm feeling closer to Allah, I'm going to start to pray. Yeah, mashallah, that's going to happen. That's like the Jedi who says, I'm going to wait until I learn how to use a lightsaber before I access the Force. It's not going to work. You can't do it. The Force is part of using the lightsaber. So Yoda is correct. It's faith or no faith. There is no try. We can't stand in the middle with one foot on the land and one foot in the boat. The boat's going to take off and we're going to fall in the ocean and get wet. Or we're going to end up on one side or the other. There's no standing in the middle. It's faith or no faith. There is no try. Once we realize that, once we realize we live in a time that most of the time is telling us, like the Sith, most of the time is telling us, actually not like the Sith, like the emperor, not the emperor, but the one who was pretending to not be the Sith, but was pretending to be the emperor, which was, what is this Force thing? What is this Force thing? This sort of mocking of the Force. The mocking of the Force in Star Wars is the secularist mocking of people of faith in the world we live in today. And we're just a bunch of wimps because we're like, oh, are we being mocked? Seriously? Mock back. Like if we really believe in God, really believe in God, it's like someone telling us there's not a table there. Seriously? You don't see a table? So sorry for you. And that's how it should be. You don't believe in God? Not, what am I going to do? How will I answer him? What do you mean how will I answer him? The proof isn't with you. The proof is with the person who's pretending not to believe in God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us ala fitra. Fitra means we have a heart that yearns for God. That's why atheists always argue. Because every atheist is an uncomfortable atheist. And they pick people that they think are less intelligent than them. So if they're picking you, you should be really insulted. Because they pick people who are less intelligent than them so they can argue philosophy with them and then go, see, I knew better. What are you talking about? Being able to talk a good game does not make unreal the chair. I can argue about that chair whether it's real or not. I like philosophy, and I could even, in fact, enjoy that argument. But in the end, it doesn't matter because the chair is still there. We can talk about God and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we can talk about prophethood, as much as we want. But in the end, God exists. And the burden of proof is not on Muslims. The burden of proof is not on people of faith. It's not even about Muslims, but anyone who believes in God. The burden of proof is not on us because we are in the reality. What we need to do, however, like the Jedis, is we need to recognize the truth of God and not live a life that pretends that the Force isn't there. Like the Jedi that lives a life and doesn't recognize the Force is the failed Jedi in Star Wars. And for us, if we're living a life that pretends that God is not there as fully and completely and omnipresent as God is, la ilaha illahu, then we're the losers. We're the ones who are not accessing. We're the problems. We're the problem. We're the trouble. We're the ones who don't get it. We're the ones with limited understanding. But when we can have we really need an intellectual breakaway. We need to recognize what we don't see and begin to see the akhirah as real. See the unseen world as just as real as the seen world and affecting us just as much. When we can really see and when we can control our emotions and when we bring on the practice of Islam, the practice of religion, the practice of our faith to give us the foundation, the capacity and the strength to see, that's the day that we really might reach that place of Jedi or Mujaddideen in our own communities. And I know you know better than I know that our communities need us desperately because our communities are ridiculous. We aren't fun to be around. We're a bunch of cranky Muslims. Nobody wants to hang around us. We're cranky in our mosques. We're cranky in our families. Our divorce rate is skyrocketing. Our young family members are fighting over inheritance. Really? We've got mosques that don't let women in them. That's just funny. Like, it used to not be funny to me, but alhamdulillah, I'm in a much better place where now I just think it's funny. Because I've learned that if something really bothers you, the best thing to do is just make it funny, because then you can survive. But really it's funny. Like, think about it, right? We want to raise the next generation of Muslims. We all agree with that. We want children to pray. We all agree with that. We want women to pray. We all agree with that. And we live as a minority group in a minority group in a majority secular society. Okay, we all agree with all this. We're not arguing. So the solution is, let's build dirty mosques and not let the women in. MashaAllah. What is that even? Like, what does that even do? And then there are other mosques where they build them and they have big walls for women. Do you know there are right now fiqh issues? There are two really serious fiqh issues across the world for Muslim women. I'm going to speak to you because you don't know. You probably don't know either. These two serious fiqh issues are that women have begun to believe that it's okay to pray behind a screen. So you'll find women at home praying with the Kaaba, praying with anyone on TV, and they're like literally following that because they think it's okay. Why do they think it's okay? Because that's how they do it in the mosque if they're allowed in. They're off in some room over there in the garage. Oh, you guys don't have garages in England. They're off in some room over there somewhere, and they can't see or hear the imam, the car park, thank you. And they put the screen up there, and then I've been in a mosque before. I actually boycott these kind of mosques, but once I had to pray, so I went in, and then it was the jama'ah, and I was like, okay, I'm going to join the jama'ah, tawbah. But anyway, so the imam is praying, electricity went out. Well, now what do we do? Where are we? And nobody knew what to do. Alhamdulillah, I've studied fiqh, so I knew what to do. I was the only one in the room. Everybody else, they literally stayed in ruku' for like 15 minutes. Bismillah, mashallah. Bisani, what are they doing? Why? Because we're not giving this opportunity. And the other thing is that women really don't know how to pray. Because one of the ways you learn how to pray is by seeing many people pray around you. And if a mosque allows women, generally it's the crazy, you don't feel connected to the imam because you're in a separate room with all the children and it's not usually clean. So no one's paying attention. So the few people that are praying, it's really hard to figure out like how other people are praying. So it's not like the Prophet's mosque where there's line after line after line, okay? So women are not learning how to pray. So I attended, during my dissertation, my thesis, you guys call it here, I was researching women's leadership, Muslim women's leadership, and I attended a prayer workshop that was really well run. It was really well done, mashallah. And it had all the details of prayer. And it was taught, PowerPoint, booklet, the works, all the little teaching tools you think are necessity. And when it was over, the adhan al-dhuhr call, and I kid you not, the same women who had been sitting there studying how to pray got up, and I saw at least 3 major prayer mistakes when they started. Why? Because we are most of the time experiential learners. So as an ummah, we are in desperate need for the mujaddideen of the next generation to come forth. We're in need to throw off the shackles of colonialism, to throw off the shackles of secularism, to throw off the shackles of feeling like we're small. What does Yoda say? What does he say? I can't remember. Luke says, you're too little to. He says, you judge me by my size, do you? Yoda's like this big. Yoda's the best. And he pulls up the ship, he can do all these things. We are judging ourselves by our size. We're tiny. And so we're shy. And we don't want to take on for ourselves what we need to do. We need to take it on. We need to identify the critical mistakes and problems in society, our own intra-society, which is our own Muslim society, and the larger society that we live in, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold us accountable for. And we need to contribute in positive ways. We need to carry forth the force and move forward into these societies in really positive, strongly positive ways. But we need to do it with our intellect, the ability to see, with our emotions intact. So we're not always riding the drama wave, because the drama wave gets nothing done. And then third, with our solid practice, our serious practice of prayer, our serious practice of what it means to be a Muslim, whether it's prayer or inheritance or zakat or whatever these details are, serious practice. With these three things, we would be the Jedis of this day. We would be the Mujahideen. We would have faith in a place where there's no faith, and we would set the example of what other people would want to be. Instead of our Muslim children saying, Mommy, Daddy, I don't want to be Muslim, we would have the society around us saying, I wish I had been born Muslim. I wish I had more midichlorians in my system, as they say in the Star Wars universe, so that I could be a Jedi. We would have children saying, I wish I could be a Muslim. But we haven't provided that. And so it's time for us to do that. It's just time for us to say, enough is enough. Faith is what's going to be critical to me in my life. I'm going to make an independent decision to begin to see the unseen world, to begin to see the akhirah as just as real as the dunya that I live in. I'm going to make an independent decision to have control over my emotions. I'm going to make an independent decision to practice my faith. And with these three together, we can come together as a Muslim ummah and make serious, each of us has different talents. Everyone's going to be doing something different. But all together we will make a serious impact on our societies, which is long overdue. And I look to this audience and hope that you will be the instigators of that. And with you, those who are painfully away from God, you need to know, and it's the last thing I'll say, you need to know, really know it like you know your name, that distance from God is the most painful life experience. All other experiences are on one side of the scale, and distance from God is on the other side. When you know that as well as you know your own name, that's when we really will become the Jedis, Mujaddideen of this time and this society, the societies and communities that we live in, and wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put us. We've all been put in different places and asked to have an impact on different groups of people. Inshallah. Sallallahu ala sayyidina habibina Muhammad. على نية القبول والفتوح مغفرة ورحمة. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Keep the faith.